Howdy folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Wednesday, February the 17th, 2016, and I have the distinct honor and great pleasure of welcoming back to the show Mr. David Haggith of the Great Recession blog, and we're going to join the conversation already in progress. Thank you very much.
Yeah, generally, I know gold has been going up, and I think it's kind of going back down again right now, isn't it?
No, they're
It's still doing okay.
they're having a hard time with it right now, and you know that market is beyond manipulated, right?
Well, that's exactly why I don't, get into it that much. I don't really see it as a very safe haven investment because I think it's one of the ultimate manipulated markets. Why else do central banks own so much gold?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah, why were they selling it a few years ago, and now they've, flipped the switch and they're buying it?
Yeah, they tell everybody all the time, well, gold is kind of worthless. It's kind of a crazy person's investment or whatever. But then they buy tons and tons and tons of it themselves. So you have to ask yourself why. It's certainly not to back their currency.
Exactly.
So it's got to be so that if gold starts to go up as a threat to their currency, as an alternative, that they can crash it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That doesn't really play into China's hand, though, because they're just acquiring gold. I don't really think that they're bombing the market with it.
Yeah, I don't know. What are they doing when they're, every time they have to put the brakes on the crash of the yuan?
They sell treasuries.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what, I think they buy gold for essentially the same reason, to, protect their currency.
Yep.
At what point they have to sell it to do that, I don't know. Right now, I think they're divesting themselves from U.S. treasuries and raising, the capital they need that way.
Yes, that's a huge part of what's going on.
They want to get out of U.S. treasuries anyway, because I'm sure they would love to see the whole U.S. treasuries market crash, but not until they're out of it.
Right. Or at least they have a comfortable number either with gold tonnage or, U.S. Treasury holdings. How does that balance out? I'm sure that's what they're watching. And as soon as they hit the number that they're looking for, then they'll call it a day.
Say, yeah, you don't want to crash the dollar when you still have a lot of dollars.
Right.
So, and the thing of it is when you're that big, you can't just say, well, then let's just get out today, right? Because that in itself would crash things. You got to sell gradually because you've got such a huge volume to sell.
Exactly. And no sense in hurting yourself, cutting your nose off to spite your face.
No, you got time, so take it.
That's it. Well, we're not going to take up too much of your time, especially since you're not feeling well. But I want to jump right into your latest article, and that is "Leave It to Larry Summers, Killer of Cash." And I think it was Tuesday the 16th, or it was Monday or Tuesday of this week. He came out and said that, we should just eliminate the $100 bill. And I want to read this quote from your article, and this is a direct quote from Larry Summers. And it says, "These are difficult times in Europe with the refugee crisis, economic weakness, security issues, and the rise of populist movements. There are real limits on what it can do to address global problems. But here is a step that will represent a global contribution with only the tiniest impact on legitimate commerce or on government budgets. It may not be a free lunch, but it is a very cheap lunch. Even better than unilateral measures in Europe would be a global agreement to stop issuing notes worth more than, say, $50 or $100. This man is completely out of his mind." How in the world is eliminating a $50 bill or a $100 bill going to have any impact on the refugee crisis, the economic weakness, or security issues that we are experiencing? How is that even possible, David?
Isn't it interesting to see these guys going to these arguments and how many articles there are coming out just in the past month about going to become a cashless society?
Yep.
I mean, I'm now seeing it almost daily in mainstream news. I mean, today there was another article on Newsmax that was about, the push to go cashless. Yesterday it was Larry Summers, or the day before, Larry Summers coming out with this article of his. The week before that, it was Bloomberg coming out with an article saying the same thing. It's almost like the White House or somebody has all of the press geared up to start cranking out the, whatever the party line is that needs to go out there, because suddenly this stuff that used to be the realm of radio Bible prophecy guys 40 years ago is now mainstream news.
And every day, and it started, I think, about a year ago, David. There was, I think the guy's name was, oh shoot, it evades me now, but it's been about a year ago, and he wrote this very detailed article about the virtues of going cashless and how it would benefit the central banks globally and how they would be able to control everything. And that's the whole point of it. Is it's not to, avert or to help the refugee crisis or economic weakness. It's about total and absolute control of our lives, in my opinion. I mean,
sure. And I think that article might have been the one in the Financial Times, but there's been several along that line. And like Larry Summers, statement, this is what you're seeing over and over from people is that, we need to kill cash because it's these big notes, the $100 bill, the 500 euro note. These are the things that terrorists use, and these are the things that drug lords use and criminals use. Well, yeah, because they use money, Of course, they use them in large chunks. But it's all to try to make cash look dirty and to get people all concerned because, well, man, this is terrorist stuff. And how after 9/11 we were all ready to give up all of our human rights in order to save ourselves from the terrorists. Well, now they want us to give up cash to save ourselves from the terrorists too. But, criminals are going to find a workaround. It's not going to take away the $100 note, whatever. They'll figure out some other way. They're not going to go out of business because of that.
That's correct. I mean, and the question that I have is, and it's directed at the banksters, because HSBC was found guilty in a court of law for drug money laundering. This has been about 2 years ago. It was well documented in mainstream media. Mm-hmm. And the question that I have for them is, how are you going to continue your drug money laundering operations if there's no cash? How is that going to benefit them?
I don't know. But what I do know is that this is a smokescreen. Because, it's like taking away all the guns and thinking you're going to get away from violent crime that way. Well, most of the time, the guns that are used in violent crime are already ones that are illegal. So,
when was the last time a criminal followed the law?
Exactly. And, you think they're going to just say, "Oh, well, shoot, we got no more Benjamin Franklins out there to put in our suitcases to pay for this stuff. I guess we're just going to have to quit dealing drugs."
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just a trumped-up excuse to try to get rid of cash, and now you hear it every single time you turn around. And, it's the old idea that if you say something long enough, it becomes truth. That's what you see. And Larry Summers is the worst of all people. He's the guy, he was majorly involved in deregulation of banks. He was majorly involved in getting rid of Glass-Steagall that lets, banks now broker investments. He was involved in deregulation or avoiding regulation of the whole derivatives market that blew up in the Great Recession. So I say, he's the author of the Great Recession, and then Obama brought him in to be or he's one of the authors of the Great Recession. Obama brought him in to be the savior of the Great Recession as his economic advisor. And, his advice to Obama was, well, let's not spend so much money on infrastructure stuff. Let's, use it on giving tax breaks. And my thought has always been the only thing that the government could have done in the way of stimulus that would not have hurt the next generation because of the amount of debt we pile up when we do it would be infrastructure. Because at least then you're giving the next generation something for the huge bill you're handing them, right? You're giving them new schools, new roads, new bridges, new trains, whatever, that they're not going to have to build. So you're handing them the bill, but you're also handing them assets that are valuable for their economy.
And that's been my argument for China when everybody starts saying, well, China's economy's in trouble, and they've got just as much debt as everybody else, and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, but they have stuff. They have all of these things that you just described. So they have something to show for their debt. What do we have to show for our debt here in the United States?
Yeah, bigger, fatter banks with bigger paid banksters, I guess.
That's it. That's what we've gotten out of all of these trillions with a T that have been siphoned out of our economy, out of our wallets, have gone to the banksters, and now they can, buy a new Rolls Royce every week, or drive up the cost of artwork, or bottles of wine, or whatever it is that they so deem in their desire for the moment. I mean, and it's sickening.
Yeah. I call Larry Summers the Chucky doll that won't die, because there's nothing he touches that doesn't turn into sewage, and yet the nation keeps turning to him like he's the guru that knows how to save things, and they keep listening to him. And it's just amazing to me that anybody would even pay attention to this guy.
It is amazing that these criminals are allowed to be a voice, to have a voice of any kind, of any level, of any depth, and yet he has the president's ear when it comes to economic policies, and how your money and my money and the audience's money, how our wealth should be spent. And we have no voice in that anymore. We haven't for a long time. And now this guy's wanting to take even $50 bills away, $100 bills away, and that's just a stepping stone to eliminate all cash. $20 bills would be next, and then $10 bills, and $5 bills, and $1 bills, and we might as well get rid of all those coins, because it costs 6.5 cents to produce a nickel because of the metal that's in it.
Yeah, he recommended getting rid of the Ben Franklins and the Ulysses S. Grants. Well, the 100 and the 50, that's over 80% of all of the value of currency that the United States has in circulation if you take those out. So you've just completely, basically neutered the cash system by taking out 80% of its value. And you've basically left it now for, the stuff for trinket purchases. You're going to go out and spend money to get a dinner or whatever kind of thing. Well, by the time you've taken 80% of it, the natural argument is going to be, well, let's just get rid of the whole rest of the thing, because what are we hanging on to this little remainder for?
Exactly, the scraps.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just costing us money.
So, gut it, and then once you've gutted it, well, then say, well, look at this thing; it's useless.
Do you think that society's going to stand for that? I mean, en masse?
I don't know. Did I think that society would stand for George Bush creating a whole new bureaucracy called Homeland Security as a way to solve the problem of a bureaucracy where departments couldn't talk to each other? Add one more layer. Did I think they would stand for having all of their emails monitored and stored up, and all of their phone calls stored up in this huge computer complex that Bush started to build and that Obama has done nothing but push to save? It doesn't make any difference which party you've got in there. The party that supposedly wants small government, stripped away your human rights, created this vast surveillance network. The Democrats under Obama have done their best to push to save it. And where's the outrage?
Where's the outrage? It's a great question.
People give up their privacy and all for the sake of having some security over the terrorists. Well, maybe the terrorists won.
Well, they have. According to the masses, I'll never forget a conversation that I had with a lady out in a very small community outside of where I live, outside of Nashville, and we were standing. She was a business owner, and she was convinced that ISIS was in the next town over and that they were coming to get her. She was convinced of that. And it was just, I couldn't hardly believe the words coming out of her mouth, but she was terrified. So the mainstream media's job was complete with her. And that's the mainstream media's job, is to keep you terrified. I mean, that's all that they do. They scare everybody to give up all of their, like you, and I love that, David. You call them human rights, and that's exactly what they are. They're not just rights that are guaranteed to us by way of the Constitution. They're just basic human rights.
And you ask, do I think that the masses, the main, part of society will go along with this? Well, the masses aren't reading the Great Recession blog, and they're not reading the Daily Coin. They're reading about Kim Kardashian and whatever's happening, in social media. And they're not really as interested in this stuff as you and I are. So what they're going to look at is convenience. Yeah, well, maybe we should get rid of cash, because I just most of the time use my iPhone now and tap it against someone else's iPhone, and the transaction is complete. And that's a lot swifter and cleaner. And they're not thinking about the fact that, well, once you go without cash, then you've given the government complete control over yourself, over the economy, because they can shut you out.
That's correct.
And they can apply negative interest rates to your money. You can put your money in the bank, and then the bank can say, well, we're going to charge you 2% or 3% or 4%. Every month that you keep it in there, we're going to take that much of it away from you for storing it instead of spending it. And that's what the push is for. And
that's what it's really about, right? Negative interest rates.
We're saying this, they haven't even pulled their punches about that. They just say outright, this is what we need to do in order to be able to apply negative interest rates, by which they mean the bank, instead of paying you interest for the privilege of holding your money, is going to charge you interest for holding it for you. And you won't have any choice, because there's no cash, and you can't really go out and buy things with gold very well. I mean, what are you going to do? Take a little fleck of gold in for dinner and say, here's how I'm paying my diner bill? You can't really do it. So if you're shut out, if you go to the cashless system, then you're stuck with them taking your money out of the bank percentage every month. They can also start charging fees every time you make a transaction. Well, that takes us processing time, so we're going to, just like the credit cards do, we're going to charge you 1 or 2%, like they do to the sellers on credit cards. Well, they'll do that to the buyers. We'll charge you a transaction fee, 1 or 2%. The government can steer what you're going to spend your money on by saying, well, some things will charge a bigger transaction fee on. It just gives them endless abilities to manipulate the economy down the road, because you don't have the option of saying, you know what, I don't like any of this, so I'm taking my money out of the bank. You can't take it out. There's no cash.
What about alternatives like Bitcoin or BitGold? I mean, do you see those as being legitimate alternatives to this situation, or is that just something that they're going to be able to take control over as well?
Well, I mean, they're just cashless systems too, right?
Right.
And the question becomes, do we wind up with a national mandatory cashless system? Right now, Bitcoin is just out there as an alternative. but will the government co-opt that or some other technology, or will the banks? They're investing in Bitcoin now out of interest in exploring that. So I can't remember what bank it was that I read was, looking at Bitcoin
Well,
and investing
Blythe
in it.
Masters she left J.P. Morgan and is now heading. So I can't remember the bank either, David, but I'm pretty sure that it's this that we're talking about the same one. She is in charge of developing Bitcoin or cryptocurrency for this banking system. Period.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, and she is criminal to the core. I mean, that woman is, you were talking about Larry Summers and the way that he deregulated or fought against the deregulation of derivatives. Well, she is the one, I believe, that developed the whole concept of derivatives. I mean, I have.
yeah. So let's put her in charge of what's going to be the replacement for cash. The banks are working on this with companies like or with things like Bitcoin, trying to figure out what they're going to do, but we don't know what technology they're going to wind up using, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
We use the term cryptocurrency because that's the big thing. Is if we're going to go to a cashless system, we want it to be anonymous so the government doesn't know what we're spending all our money on. But if it's anonymous, how have you solved the problem of the criminals that are going to be, using this to hide their transactions and hide what they're doing?
Do you think that I personally see a massive black market growing around if they do in fact go to a cashless society. I see a black market developing almost instantly. What do you think?
How do you see it working, Rory?
Well, either through barter or through the use of precious metals or probably just pure barter. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't see people are people, and not everyone is going to buy into this. And I would say that I personally believe that there will be a significant number of people, 25, 30% or more, that will reject it outright,
yeah,
if not significantly more. And I believe that a black market would could easily spring up and start a workaround on this thing. I mean, they
yeah.
are. Go
And I
ahead.
don't know if you'd call it a black market or a subculture or what, but yeah, I think that certainly there's going to be people. I mean, I'm going to be very reluctant to go along with it. There's going to be a lot of people that really don't like it, and but your only option then will be through that I can see would be through barter, whether it's with using precious metals, using the vegetables you grow, whatever. But that's a really awkward and difficult way to live, so it's not going to be easy.
Well, it's not going to be easy, but humans, I give them a lot. I give them credit. We are an inventive lot, and
Yeah.
we will come up with something. There's probably people that are already thinking about it, and already some systems that are on a very small scale that are already working. I mean, look at the what's that currency that they use in Brighton, England? The Brighton dollars, or that has an image of David Bowie on it. I
Yeah.
mean, and there are communities here in the United States. Unfortunately, they elude me at this point, but there's two or three communities here that already use alternative currencies, and then you have the state of South Dakota that has a state central bank. I mean, so there are opportunities already out there that are in place, and I would think that something would happen. I mean, I just think that there would be, like you said, a counterculture, subculture, whatever you want to call it, that would spring up almost instantly, because people are not going to. I think that there's going to be a large percentage of people that are going to reject this whole idea.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. And you talk about a black market. Well, let's come back to this whole concept that they're using to kill cash by saying it's going to, it's going to seriously hurt terrorists and criminals, all these people who are using $100 bills to do their trade in. No, it's not. They're just going to switch to using gold,
Right.
obviously. And they will do their dealings in that if they need to, deal with $1 million deals or whatever. So then what happens? Well, that didn't work. We didn't cut off the bad stuff that was going on with Ben Franklin's. So now we got to cut off gold. So now you've got the United States or whatever stepping in like it did under FDR and saying, well, holding of gold bullion is going to be illegal too. You're going to have to turn in all your gold bullion, because that's all that's going to happen is every time the government tries to come up with something like this, crime just finds its workaround, and the obvious workaround in this case is going to be gold. So what's their next step going to be but to try to shut that off too?
It's very concerning. Like you pointed out at the very beginning, David, the sheer volume of drum beating that's going on to move everybody to a cashless society. I mean, to me, that reeks of desperation, and it just says that we must be getting pretty close to a major meltdown or something, some derivatives blowing up or something happening that these guys are not going to be able to control at all, and they're just trying to hedge their bet at this point.
Well, and I think what we're coming down to is the blow up of their rescue plan, that it hasn't worked. It was never going to work. And we see, now that the Federal Reserve has more or less stopped doing its stimulus program, we see everything starting to run downhill. And they know it's just going to pick up speed and get worse and worse. And their plan is to say, well, what we got to do in order to save this is we got to go to negative interest rates, because we've already gone to zero and that wasn't enough. So we got to go negative. So the big blow up is really the blow up of their plan. And they, apparently think that by going to negative interest rates, they can still make their plan work.
But it's not going to.
It's not going to, and you got to wonder: are they dumb enough to think that it's going to work, or is the plan really just to get you to the point of going cashless in the first place? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get big into conspiracy theories, but you've either got some incredibly stupid people that think that somehow going into the twilight zone of negative interest rates, which is another thing I just wrote an article on, is going to save the day. Or you've got some incredibly corrupt people. I don't see how you got any choice. It's one or the other. They're either as evil as can be or as stupid as can be for highly educated people. I mean, look at zero interest didn't work. The economy is failing all over the world. And so we went lower and lower and lower in interest until we got it down to zero. Now some banks have started doing negative interest in some of the European countries and elsewhere, Japan. And it's not working. And they're saying, well, it's because we haven't gone negative enough. We need to go more negative. Where does it end? I mean, let's just stop the accelerator all the way through the floor and right down to the road, right?
It's amazing. Well, let's see. I broke the horse's leg, and it's not walking. So I guess if I break another leg, it'll get up and walk over to me.
Yeah, let's break them all.
That's
the mentality. So
that tells me,
I think if you double down on failure, you'll succeed, or this is just something really corrupt.
Yeah, see, and my money's on really corrupt.
And
last question, David, and I'll let you get back to your morning. I know you've got a lot going on and you're not feeling well, and I really appreciate all your time.
Sure.
With Russia and Saudi Arabia talking about stopping oil production, and they've been floating this idea for a couple of weeks now, but there was a pretty loud uproar yesterday regarding this. If they do that, what do you see? What impact do you see that having on the conversation that we're having, along with the economy, the failing economy as a whole?
Well, the stock market's going back up yesterday and today, and maybe in part because of this. It's like, okay, big breath of relief. So they're going to stop crashing the price of oil. That's not what they said. They said they're going to keep oversupplying as much as they already are, that they're just not going to ratchet it up another notch beyond this. So what's been said doesn't change anything that's happening right now. It only means it's not going to get even worse as far as Saudi Arabia and Russia are concerned. But Iran wasn't a part of that conversation. Iran didn't agree to any of that. So we still don't know what the effect is going to be of their coming in. Is that going to drive the price of oil down further? Well, I think so. But even if it doesn't, let's say Iran comes in, the price more or less stabilizes where it's at. Russia and Saudi Arabia, this is important, did not say we're going to cut back production. They said we're just not going to ramp it up, make the situation even worse. Well, it's already terrible. So the companies in the oil belt that are going out of business are going to continue to have the same struggles for months to come. And the companies that default and the banks that are impacted by that, that's just dominoes down the road that are still coming.
So it really hasn't even gotten started yet, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started, but there's certainly more of it to come, right? Because first of all, the easiest things to tip over, tip, and the things that are a little less marginal are next to go. But the stresses are going to keep on. The pressure of companies that are pumping but not really making any money is going to drag on for months, because that's really what I see that Saudi Arabia and Russia has said, is that we're just going to keep up this.
Now, who benefits from this? I mean, is the goal to crush the U.S. shale oil and Canadian tar sands oil? I mean, is that the goal that these guys have in mind, do you think?
Well, ostensibly, that's what they say. Saudi Arabia's goal is. It could well be just a battle for market share globally. Not just Saudi Arabia, but Russia, everybody else. I think that for a long time, people have counted on, well, when the price of oil starts to get too low, we can count on the OPEC nations to reduce their supply and get it back up. And so the price of oil would go down, they would reduce supply. We'd keep pumping at the same rate. The price of oil would go down some more, OPEC would reduce supply, we'd keep pumping at the same rate. And what they saw is they're gradually losing more and more market share because they're the ones making the cuts. So they've said, we're not going to make the cuts this time. We're going to keep pumping regardless of what it does to the price. And you guys, the United States, Russia, others, you can make the cuts. And Russia this time around didn't say it was going to make a cut. It said, well, okay, we'll just freeze here. We won't produce more. The United States hasn't said it's going to make any cuts. And Iran has said it's going to increase its production. So, is it a battle for market share? It could be. Some people, have said, well, maybe it's actually a strategy secretly between the United States and Saudi Arabia to try to put the squeeze on Russia and Iran by, making it so that their economies, which are already hurting, are not going to benefit much from oil and are going to hurt more. But I don't know.
It's just one gigantic global game that these guys are playing. And unfortunately, we are all caught in the crosshairs of their nonsense.
Yeah, I don't think you can know, what the motives are behind it, but you can certainly see what its effect is on us, and that there's no backing down here. Nobody backed down in the last couple of days. They just said we're not going to ratchet it up higher.
Okay. Well, it's a lot to think about, and we have a lot going on. And David, we certainly appreciate you keeping us informed and what is happening and what these guys are doing. And we've been speaking with David Haggith of the Great Recession blog. And David, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, I think that's good. My voice is running out here, but I appreciate the conversation, Marty.
Well, I appreciate all your time, and we will do this again in the not too distant future, David.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.